good morning to everyone. So phase 2 is a hot topic right now because as phase 1 is nearing its 1 year mark, and it's also the beginning of phase 2 for a segment of taxpayers. So it's actually a trending right now, and what we are trying to look into in this webinar is what are the changes in invoicing phase 2, and from the perspective of a user, be it an accountant or a finance manager or an auditor, how can what's their perspective of how the invoicing in phase 2 will work, how the standard invoices are cleared and simplified invoices are reported. So everything will be covered in this presentation. So I'll just share my screen. Okay, I hope my screen is visible. If we get a confirmation, we'll just start with the presentation.
Yeah, we can move on.
Okay, thank you. So without further ado, we'll let's get into the webinar. So first, we'll take a quick recap of what has happened in phase 1. So we'll just quickly go through the phase 1 to understand what are the changes in phase 2. So as you all know, the phase 1 was applicable for all resident taxpayers from 4th December 2021. And along with the notifications, ZATCA has issued many guidelines on what are the requirements of the solution that has to be complied for phase 1. So let's take a look at what are the requirements that has been there in phase 1. And from there, we'll move on to the phase 2, what are the additions that are there. So first one, in requirements, it was sequential invoice numbers. So invoice numbers would also include the associated documents, which is credit note and debit notes. Okay, so everything should be in a sequence and there shouldn't be a counter reset. So from 1000 or 2000, you can't reset the counter back to 0 and start once again. So that shouldn't be allowed. Okay, and another thing was it's really important that it should be a cloud solution. There are still solution providers in Saudi Arabia that are providing offline softwares for taxpayers who are unaware of these guidelines, who are taking advantage of these taxpayers who are not aware that these cloud solutions are mandated by ZATCA. So what the cloud solution means is that it should be connected to internet when you are issuing an invoice. So that's one important fact in phase 1. Even in phase 2, it should be connected to the internet. And another point to note is that there is no option to modify or delete any invoice. So invoice would include obviously the associated notes. So what is meant by a modification? So what if your accountant makes a mistake and overcharges a client? So all this should be corrected using a credit note, and an edit to the invoice shouldn't be made. Okay. Then one big added new thing was a QR, which was mandatory for simplified tax e-invoices and optional for standard tax invoices. Even though it was optional for standard tax invoices, most of the providers started providing QR both in simplified and standard tax invoices, because most of them started rejecting the invoices without a QR. So almost everybody is providing a QR both on simplified and standard invoices. And simplified tax invoices would mean any invoice that is less than 1000 Riyal. So any invoice that is less than 1000 Riyal is a simplified tax invoice, and which would not include export and internal supplies. So that's about simplified and tax invoices. So one thing I forgot to mention is that if anybody is having any doubt, we'll be pausing after every slide. So if you want, you can unmute yourself. We'll be turning on microphone to unmute at that point of time to ask your questions, or you can directly put it in the chat box. So that's that. And so what does the QR contain in phase 1? So in phase 1, the QR contains the seller name, only the basic details, the seller name, VAT number, timestamp, which would include the date and time of issue of invoice, and the invoice total with VAT and VAT amount separately. So these were the only things that were in the QR in the phase 1. And one thing to note was that invoice should be in Arabic. So what happened is that most of the solution providers and still taxpayers are using invoices where the labels will be marked in Arabic, but the inventory or the client name, everything will be in English. That's not actually allowed as per the guidelines provided by ZATCA. That buyer name and every single detail, even the inventory, should be in Arabic. And secondary language, you can add on to that English or whatever language is comfortable for your clients, that can be added, but Arabic should be the principal language. And these invoices have to be stored for 6 years from end of tax period. The tax period will be from Jan to December. So for take example of an invoice that has been created on April 1st, 2022, which would mean the tax period end would be December 2022. December 31st, December 2022, and 6 years from that will be 31st December 2028. So till that gap, it has to be stored. And one more thing is that it should contain a secured login system, and there should be any anonymous login or something like that to issue an invoice. So now we have good grip of phase 1 of invoicing. We'll see what's new in phase 2. So in phase 2, one important concept is EGS. So you will be hearing this term a lot more in the coming slides, as well as in phase 2, you will be hearing it a lot more. Like, what is EGS? And EGS is not compatible with ZATCA. Like that, you will hear a lot of places where EGS would come up. So in simpler terms, EGS is any piece of software that is compatible enough to interact with ZATCA for various scenarios, including clearance and reporting of invoices and its associated documents, which is credit note and debit note. So when an accountant issues an invoice, he prepares an invoice, this EGS is the module that will be sending the invoice for clearance to ZATCA, getting the response from ZATCA, everything, the QR preparation, everything will be done by this piece of software called EGS, which is E-Invoicing Generation Solution. So you'll be hearing this term a lot more in the coming slides. And one another thing is that hash generation and hash chaining. So hashing, you would have heard before also, password hashing and everything. So hashing is a one directional cryptographic function which uses a lot of math functions to create a code that can be decrypted to its original form. So it's one directional cryptographic function. And ZATCA has hashing put in place so that invoices that has been generated can never be modified. So when you prepare an invoice, it will have an hash. If you just add a simple spacebar or a full stop or one character, if you add to that, the hash will be completely different. So ZATCA can understand that it's a different invoice, and you can never modify the same. Okay. Another thing is that when an invoice is generated, it would contain both current invoice hash and previous invoice hash. So this is meant by the hash chaining. So hash chaining would mean that if you issue an invoice number 10, it would contain the invoice number 9's hash, and so on. The 9 will contain the invoice hash of 8, so that a chain is formed. So with this chain of hashing, ZATCA can know if you submit invoice number 11 and without the 10. So invoice number 11 would contain the hash of 10. And when you submit the invoice number 11 without submitting the invoice number 10, ZATCA can know there was an invoice that was missing to be submitted. So this allows there no tampering in the sequence of invoices, and to ensure that there are no missing invoices that has been reported to ZATCA. So they can be ensured of that. And one more thing is that e-invoices generated should be in XML or PDF A3 format. So this PDF, we have all heard of PDF formats, but PDF A3 is a PDF that can embed a different document. You might have seen government documents wherein inside the PDF, you will have an option to attach a document within that PDF. So if you open that PDF and go to the attachment section, you could see that. So every PDF A3 format, every PDF A3 would contain the XML of that invoice within that PDF. So XML, as we know, it's not a human readable format. It will have so many tags, and inside that information will be there. But that's a format that ZATCA portal would understand. But PDF is a format that humans can understand. So there is a difference. That's why both this XML is embedded inside the PDF, attached within the PDF, and it's stored. Okay. Then both simplified and tax invoices should contain a QR. So in phase 1, as we have seen, only the QR is mandatory in simplified tax invoices, but not in standard tax invoices. But from phase 2 onwards, both the simplified and standard tax invoices should contain a QR code. And there are additions to this QR code. So there are 4 more items to the QR code which are not human readable. So what happens is that there are a lot of QR scanners out there in the market, but it's the best practice to use the ZATCA provided QR scanners, because all these invoices, hash, cryptographic stamp, everything can be complied with ZATCA. It can only provided by the ZATCA. So you make sure that you use their scanners, especially in phase 2. In phase 1, it was human readable items inside the QR code, but from phase 2 onwards, the things inside the QR are not human readable. So first thing is that current invoice hash. So what is the hash of the current invoice? So we'll encrypt that and put it inside the QR. Then cryptographic stamp, which would be a combination of the invoice hash plus the private key. So we'll get on to the private key, from where we get the private key in the coming slides. For now, just understand that the cryptographic stamp will be from the private key and the invoice hash. Using this, we'll create the cryptographic stamp. And there should be the public key of this cryptographic stamp. So we are using our private key, which is a secret, and ZATCA doesn't know that, or nobody else is in hold of that private key. So we'll use that to create the cryptographic stamp. But for ZATCA wouldn't know if we actually use the private key for that. So for that purpose, we'll give the public key of that cryptographic stamp to ZATCA, so that they can know that it was actually created using the private key that was provided by the EGS. Okay, and lastly, only for simplified invoices. This last item will be only for simplified invoices. ZATCA's public key from production CSID. CSID is nothing but cryptographic stamp ID. So we'll come on to from where ZATCA provides us this cryptographic stamp ID, everything in the coming slide, in the onboarding slide. Okay. For now, just note down that there will be invoice hash, cryptographic stamp, public key of this cryptographic stamp, and only for simplified invoices, we'll keep the production CSID. Okay. Then lastly, in case of standard tax invoices, this EGS. EGS is what? The module which communicates with the ZATCA for clearance. Okay. This is the module that actually communicates with ZATCA and gets the response. So this EGS will be the person, the piece of software that will create and pass this QR and cryptographic stamp to ZATCA. Okay. Upon receipt, ZATCA in their portal will modify it. Modify what? The QR and cryptographic stamp, and return the e-invoice as XML format. So this XML will be received back by EGS. It will be decrypted, made into a PDF A3 format, and sent to the ERP for printing. So this is all that's happening in phase 2. So in the workflow and everything will be coming up in the next slide. For now, if anybody has any doubt in phase 1, phase 2, and these slides, please you can proceed to unmute yourself or put your question in the chat box for clarification.
Rishad, you can see a question, right?
Sorry, I'm not. I'll just move on to the chat box. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. In PDF A3, can we edit or no? You can't actually edit. There is only an option to attach not attach files, attach the XML. Only the XML should be attached to that PDF A3. The XML would contain the invoice hash, the cryptographic stamp, the QR, and in an encrypted form. Everything will be there in inside the PDF A3. So it's just a PDF. You can't edit. You can't do anything with that. So I hope that clears your question.
Yeah, we can move on.
Okay, if that's the only question, then I'll go back to the presentation. Okay, so now we'll get more idea on how you can onboard into phase 2. So you are applicable to do phase 2 from say January 1st. Okay, so how are you going to get it prepared? So we have 3 segments over here. The client, which is you, and the FlickTax, which is the EGS module, and ZATCA portal. So here, if your ERP already complies with phase 2, it would have the EGS module inbuilt in that books ERP. So if your ERP is not complied with phase 2, you will have to purchase and connect a different EGS, here FlickTax, for example, in order to create the invoice. So at the first, ZATCA won't know that we are your, or say whichever EGS you are using or whichever books you are using, it's your actual EGS provider. ZATCA won't know that. So first, the client should give the basic organization details to the EGS of FlickTax over here. So this FlickTax will collect the details like your business organization name, the industry, your VAT number, your location, everything will be captured. Sorry, yeah. And it will be created into a document called CSR document, which is a certificate signing request, along with an OTP. So this OTP is from the client's Fatoora portal. From client's Fatoora portal, they can generate one OTP for onboarding their EGS or their books, which is complied with phase 2. So what is this CSR? What does it contain? So the CSR is an encrypted document containing the organization name, VAT, industry, location, public key of EGS unit. So this EGS would create a private key and a public key when it goes to submit to ZATCA. So only the public key will be given by the EGS unit to ZATCA along with the EGS serial number. So when EGS takes a registration, they would have a serial number allocated to that EGS. So we'll have to provide that along with these documents and a few more, which are more basic details. We'll have to provide it to ZATCA. And ZATCA will, upon receipt of this CSR document, will return a compliance cryptographic stamp ID, which is also called CCSID. So this compliance cryptographic stamp ID and request ID is returned by the ZATCA portal, which this all steps happens within the EGS and ZATCA. Okay. So once we receive this compliance cryptographic stamp ID and the request ID, we'll send it back to ZATCA requesting for production CSID. Production CSID would mean production cryptographic stamp ID, which is used to hash and provide it in the QR. So this is what we use for creating invoices in phase 2, this production CSID. So you might be wondering, why not when we submit the CSR, why not they directly provide as a production CSID, and why do they give compliance cryptographic stamp ID first? Then we have to again request for production CSID. It is because this production CSID has an expiry date. Since you are using this as your to create invoices, if there is any, if your data breach happens at your database, if your client's place your gets leaked, they can forge invoices using that. So it has a expiry date for this production CSID. But all these first two steps are one-time process. We just have to submit the CSR one time and get the CSID, CCSID once. Using that, we can apply for production CSID and get it back. Okay. So as of now, the live system has not started because ZATCA will start phase 2 from January 1st, 2023 only. So as of now, what production CSID will be getting is a test production CSID. This is the workflow after January 1st. So that time we'll get the original production CSID. For now, whatever ZATCA is giving us is a test CSID, the test cryptographic stamp ID, used to create test invoices to see if your ERP is compatible enough, your EGS is providing the correct data, everything can be tested using this test production CSID. So this is how you have to onboard to phase 2. So there are a few more points to be noted, that the production CSID is valid only for a certain period. The period is not yet actually notified by ZATCA, but it would hopefully be 6 months to 1 year or more. So we are hoping it will be like that, but the correct period, it's not yet notified by ZATCA. And this EGS, the module which is communicating with ZATCA, is unique to a VAT number and an EGS. Say, for example, you are a big client, you have so many locations, and there's a lot of bulk invoices that you are creating. So this client can have two EGS, one EGS over here, one EGS over here. So it can send both data to both the EGS and get it cleared from ZATCA. So they will have to do the same procedure like CSR document, everything with that other EGS too, if they want to have multiple EGS. Okay, so this production ID, as I said, is unique to a batch number and an EGS. And there can be multiple EGS for a single client. I hope this is clear. Basil, can you please give the option to unmute themselves, or if there is any question in chat, we can look into that right now. Actually, yes, the private key will be written by the client if you are having the books with yourself. I mean, the accounting software that you're using, the ERP which you're using, is complied with phase 2, then it will be stored in your server itself. But if you're using a third party like FlickTax to communicate with the ZATCA portal and get it cleared, in such cases, the private key will be saved by the EGS. The EGS will retain that, save and securely save it in their database, then use it for communication with ZATCA whenever the client sends for an invoice. So if I hope that clears your question. If the client itself has their own books, it will be retained by the client, and this will be sent. The private key anyways won't be shared with ZATCA anytime. It will be with either with the client or with the EGS at all time. But the public key will be given to ZATCA on the registration process itself.
Yeah, we can move on.
Okay, if there is no more questions, yeah. Okay, now let's see, when an accountant enters an invoice in their accounting system, so what happens? What happens in the background? How when does it get communicated to ZATCA? How does ZATCA deal with it? So everything will just So when an accountant or a person user inputs an invoice data into their ERP, and in this case the ERP is not compatible with phase 2, that's why they are using an EGS to communicate with ZATCA. If their books or the accounting software was already complied with phase 2, the communication will be directly from the ERP to the ZATCA. Okay, the EGS module will be inbuilt inside the phase 2 complied books. So when an accountant uh, issues an invoice, the invoice raw data, like the invoice details, like who is the buyer, what is the buyer address, what is the unique ID of that invoice, then what's the amount, what are the line items inside that invoice, what is the VAT amount, everything will be provided to the EGS. Okay, then the EGS will validate this information and send it to ZATCA. So this EGS would validate the data and prepare the XML. So what does this XML contain? It would contain the invoice hash, cryptographic stamp, QR code, and submit it for clearance in real time. Whenever you submit an invoice, at that as a split second, it will be sent for ZATCA for clearance. And if the validation is failed, the reason will be provided to ERP, and they will have to correct it and send it back. So in this case, the EGS would validate the data and prepare the XML and send it to ZATCA in real time. And ZATCA would respond back with an XML with modified QR. As we have seen in standard tax invoices, the QR and cryptographic stamp created by EGS will be modified and sent back by ZATCA. So when they receive this, the standard invoice details, they will validate the XML and respond with modified QR and cryptographic stamp along with the status as cleared. That is why the standard tax invoicing is called clearance process. Standard tax invoices would have a clearance process. Okay. And when we receive back this XML, this is decoded by the EGS, and from EGS, the EGS would convert it to a PDF A3 format with embedded XML and store it for 7 years. Okay, and share it back to ERP for printing. So this PDF will be shared with the ERP, and they can print it and provide it to the client. So I hope this process is clear. And if you have any doubt, you can please unmute yourself or ask in the chat box.
Yeah, we can move on, sir.
Okay. Okay, this is a standard e-invoicing procedure. And for simplified tax invoices, the reporting process. So for standard e-invoices, it was clearance process. For simplified tax invoices, it is reporting process. So what is reporting process? So when an ERP or POS raises an invoice, this is simplified invoice, then the information is passed to the EGS, and EGS will directly send it back to ERP for printing without even reporting it to ZATCA. So what happens in case of simplified tax invoices is that EGS itself would validate it and prepare the QR and make it prepare the XML, embed it into PDF and send it back to ZATCA. Send it back to the ERP for printing. So you might ask why is simplified tax invoices need not be reported to ZATCA. It has to be reported, but simplified invoices will be reported to ZATCA within 24 hours using cron jobs. So cron jobs would mean scheduled batch jobs. So it's the act say the guidelines says that you should report it within 24 hours, but you can actually edit the schedule, make it every 2 hours. Whatever simplified invoices that you have generated can be reported to ZATCA every 2 hours and get it cleared, get it reported, I mean. And so once we send it to ZATCA using this batch jobs in bulk, we'll send the simplified invoices, and ZATCA will validate the simplified invoices and responds with the status as reported. So in this case, ZATCA won't, modify or edit, edit the hash or something, but it would respond, okay, you have reported these invoices back to the EGS module. So this is how the simplified tax reporting process works. Is there any clarification required in this process?
No, we don't have any questions, Rishabh. We can go.
Okay, we'll move forward then. So now we'll get back to the applicability of phase 2. So who all need to comply with the phase 2 from January 1st onwards? So the applicability of integration phase with the phase 2 is called integration phase, is carried out as different waves capturing certain segments of taxpayers. So ZATCA would issue notifications for a threshold of turnover. Whoever crosses that turnover would need to comply with the phase 2. So applicable dates for each wave will be prospectively declared 6 months beforehand. So if ZATCA wants you to comply with the phase 2, say for example from 1st January, it has to issue the notification 6 months before. So you will have the time to get everything ready. And the first wave of phase 2 has been notified by ZATCA on 24th June 2022. So it has been notified, and in this wave, the resident taxpayers with turnover of 3 billion real or more in calendar year 2021, that means the last tax period, whoever has crossed the threshold of 3 billion real should comply with the integration phase between 1st January 2023 to 30th June 2023. So it's a misconception that every phase 2 has to be complied from 1st January 2023 itself. No, actually you have time from 1st January 2023 to 30th June 2023, but it's better that whichever business is have to be complied with the phase 2, do it from January 1st itself, so they can have all their data for that financial year in that ERP itself. If you are moving your ERP to a different one which is complied with phase 2, then you can do it. So you can start a fresh financial year during that period. So whoever is below 3 billion real, turnover below 3 billion real, would have to continue in phase 1 itself. Whatever simplified and QR that you are generating, you should continue doing that, and there is no requirement of any change in your system. Okay, so everybody's clear with the applicability phase, applicability of phase 2.
So you can explain regarding the second or third phase, whether any notification is there.
Sorry, what?
regarding the second wave, whether government has made any notification for second wave?
No, as of now, ZATCA has not made any notification for the second wave for people below 3 billion real turnover. But we expect it will be from, might issue from June and would have to comply within the next 6 months. That's the information we have, but officially ZATCA has not issued any notification regarding second phase. I mean, the second wave of phase 2.
So we can expect a notification before 6 months of implementation, right?
Yes.
Okay, fine. We can move.
Okay. So now that we have covered the intricacies of phase 2, and you might be wondering, how can you tackle all these regulatory compliances put forward by ZATCA? And whatever business category that you are in, if you are a van salesperson who just needs a billing, or a small or medium enterprise who needs a full-fledged accounting system, or a big enterprise with a custom ERP but doesn't have a phase 2 compliant module. So everything, we have a range of products at Flick. I'll just go through one by one. So we have a product called FlickBills, which is a simple e-invoicing solution, which is phase 1 and phase 2 complied, and it has both the languages, Arabic and English, so any user can use it. And we are POS ready, so it can be easily used in restaurants, cafes, or any place where you need a touchscreen POS system. It can be accessed from mobile, so you can generate your QRs on the go, issue invoices on the go. And it is best suited for van salesperson, restaurant chains, salons, freelancers, and so on. So any small business can use our billing solution. And we have a product called FlickBooks, which provides accounting solution for small and medium enterprises. It's also phase 1 and 2 compliant, and it's also multilingual. So any Arab person can use it, and whoever knows English, both can use it. And it's also mobile friendly, so you can access different sophisticated dashboards from your mobile, issue and journal entry, everything just from your mobile or tablet or whatever device you're comfortable with. And this is best suited for service providers, which is a major segment of SMEs, departmental stores, logistics providers, contractors, manufacturing entities, you name it. Anybody who needs a full-fledged accounting system can opt for a FlickBooks. And this FlickTax is the module which we have seen in the presentation, which is an EGS module. So as you can see, there are clearance and reporting tabs over here. So clearance would mean that the standard e-invoice has been cleared, and reporting would be for simplified e-invoices. So all invoices will be listed over here, and the status regarding that will be ready in a quick glance. So FlickTax is mainly for existing entities with existing ERPs who has a custom software and want to connect, comply with phase 2. So such users can opt for a FlickTax, and it's phase 2 compliant, and it's multilingual dashboard. We have Arabic and English, and pre-validation of invoices are done so that the rate of failure when we send it to ZATCA will be very low. And we have bulk clearance and reporting, which would mean that if your ERP is able to expose an API, we can build an adapter to directly communicate with your ERP. If that's not the case, you can provide us in Excel, XML, CSV, JSON, or any other format. You can provide us the details and manually bulk upload it to our system, and we'll get it cleared and reported. And we are using HTTPS to access these APIs, so everything will be secured and there will be no data leakage. And we are regularly vulnerability assessment and penetration testing is done by third parties on our all applications. So it's actually secured, and every data is stored securely. So that's it on this webinar, and thanks everyone for joining this webinar. And back to you, Basil.
So Irshad has almost covered every area. I think he has covered phase 1, phase 2, regarding how to validate tax invoice and simplify tax invoice. Also, you have got covered the applicability. And thanks, Irshad, for introducing our products, FlickBills, FlickBooks, and FlickTax. So thanks you of you. So if anyone got any questions to ask Irshad, you can turn on your mic and ask. I am switching your mic on. So if anyone to ask anything regarding the solutions or regarding the application, the eligibility, the requirements, or even regarding the product, you can ask right now. So I'm turning on the mic.
Also, this webinar will be available in YouTube channel. So if you want to refer it back, it will be available in our YouTube channel also.
Okay. So is there any questions to ask? Yeah, then we can move on, Usha. There is no questions.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. I have an ERP, and how should I post the bills to the Flick?
So how you can do is that you will have to build a connection with your ERP and our tax module. So if you are sticking with your existing ERP, then actually you can build a solution that can connect with our FlickTax module, then get it cleared and reported for standard and simplified invoice respectively.
Okay. What will be the connectivity? How will be the connectivity exactly?
Connectivity, if your ERP is able to provide us API, expose the API for us with basic details like who is the buyer, what is the line items. If you can transfer that through an API to our system, if that's possible, we will build the adapter and connect it with your device, with your ERP.
Okay. For simplified tax invoice, it is not a major part because it will be a bulk upload, right? But for the business to business, when I bill in my ERP, at
Yes.
every moment I should send that
Yeah.
to your system.
Yes, it should be in real time, but most of the ERP will be able to customize using a REST API to connect with our system so that this can seamlessly flow the data from your ERP to our FlickTax EGS module. But if that's not the case, then you will have to delay issuing the B2B invoices. If there is no way that you can connect with any EGS module, then that you will have to manually upload, then get the bills cleared, then only you can give it to a B2B customer, a standard invoice, then only you can provide that.
FlickTax supports Excel and CSV also, I think, as you
Yes,
mentioned.
Excel, CSV, JSON, whatever formats that you have, you can directly import it to our software. Then you can also view the status if it is cleared, reported, everything from our dashboard itself.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Mr.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. So is there any other questions?
How about backup option in FlickBooks? Backup, Asan, do you mean that the storage services that we provide of invoices, or backup option would mean what? If it's regarding the storage, we would store the invoices for 7 years, and you can download it from our portal itself whenever you have an entry that has to be checked. So it will be the backup of data will be done every 2 to 3 hours in our backup server also. So if anything happens to the main database, we would have all the data stored. So anyway, we are using Amazon servers, so it's highly secured and reliable servers where major solution providers are already, the big websites are already using Amazon servers for such purposes. I hope that clears us.
Yeah, that's the question. Yeah, that's answered. Is there any other questions? Yeah, I think, Rusha, we can wind up then. Almost we have answered the questions. Yep. Okay, thank you all. We are exiting then. The video will be in our YouTube channel at Flick Solution. That's it. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you everyone once again for being here.